ARAT Prime? No way, is it actually?
ARAT Prime, what?
It's ARAT Prime.
That's gotta be ARAT Prime.
ARAT Prime.
Oh my god, is that
Talking about ARAT
to the
Prime.
heart
How
of
ARAT Prime?
Yes, ARAT Prime.
ARAT Prime. It is the answer to everything. I've been waiting for Extinction to release on ARK Survival Ascended ever since its launch on October 25th, 2023. Has it been that long already? A part of me still feels like ASA's launch was just a couple months ago, and I can't be the only one. That's the passage of time, my friends. One moment you're waking up on a mysterious space island filled with dinosaurs, and the next you're fighting giant kaijus with fancy mech suits in an attempt to save Earth itself from an alien xenomaterial that has the knack for turning those very dinosaurs you knew so well into literal zombies. Next, you're gonna tell me we gotta follow in the footsteps of some ancient lesbian Chinese warrior from the 3rd century across the planet to find some lost vampire colony's Genesis starship harboring Vin Diesel playing what's essentially Super Oppenheimer Dom Toretto before a giant Heinz funky purple-infused mad meat tentacle eyeball scientist from the 19th century subsumes it in order to spread his will across the cosmos forever. That's right. I just explained to you, in layman's terms, the plot of ARK Survival Ascended's yet to be released Lost Colony DLC, where we'll be following in the footsteps of survivor Mei-Yin Lee on her journey to a place called ARAT Prime, so that she can face off against element vampires and activate what's called the Superluminal Link, one that would allow Helen, not so fast. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go back to why I was so excited for Extinction Ascended's launch in the first place. Extinction holds a very special place in my heart as an ARK fan, because it's where I first found my interest in the game's story, through none other than Anthomnia and the old lore videos he used to make on the subject.
However, before I jump into all of that stuff, because we've got one hell of a rabbit hole to jump down, people.
Next to the island, Extinction was my most played and definitely most enjoyed map on Survival Evolved. So naturally, upon hearing the news that it'd be getting a UE5 facelift for Survival Ascended, I was ecstatic. Not just for the gameplay and the fancy visuals, but the hopes that we'd get more information on ARK's worst-kept secret, ARAT Prime. Referring back to those old videos by Anthomnia, one big talking point for him was the mysterious location known as ARAT Prime. Using what few scraps we were given through Explorer notes and other environmental context clues, Anthom had come to the conclusion that ARAT Prime was supposed to be the launch site for the ARK network, which we now know is, in all reality, really incorrect, thanks to the introduction of the Genesis Season Pass, and Lost Colony to the overarching ARK canon.
Well, what is ARAT Prime then?
We're getting there, just hold your equi. Once Extinction Ascended did eventually roll around, my and many other lore enthusiasts' prayers were answered, with the reveal of ARK Lost Colony after Extinction's not-so-remastered Ascension. Yeah, it's abundantly clear, especially with how many bugs are being fixed even to this date, how rushed Extinction Ascended's initial launch was. Which I guess mirrors Extinction Evolved's launch as well. I will say though, not only are the ARK devs doing a good job of squashing a lot of those bugs between DDoS attacks and the ARK fanbase's ever-mounting toxicity, but Extinction Ascended's map is overall really good. And while I do have a few personal gripes here and there, such as, why do these lights go over this glass? This looks really dumb. Why don't these lights flicker anymore? Where the hell is the moon? What the fuck? Compared to the other remastered maps we've gotten, Extinction is by far the best looking. A sentiment rang out through most of the ARK community. I mean, seriously, how much orange do you need on one map to be considered the ARK Survival Ascended standard? Orange rocks? Check. Grass taller than Shaquille O'Neal? Check. Forgo all pre-existing environmental storytelling? Check. Double check on that last one. Survival Ascended's shortcomings aside, I'm here for one thing, and one thing only. Lost Colony. For years, us theorists have been drip-fed information on Lost Colony, or as it was formerly known, ARAT Prime. And with Ned moving on to greener pastures, there's nobody who's more fit to put these puzzle pieces together and make this video than me. So, strap in survivors, because it's gonna be a long, bumpy, and complicated road to ARAT Prime. I won't blame you if you haven't read any of the Explorer notes on Extinction, or on any other map for that matter, as it's a mediocre form of storytelling under the environmental and gameplay context of ARK as a whole, which, come to think of it, is probably why it's so different in later DLCs. Anyways, to understand what ARAT Prime truly is, I need to first abridge the entire story of Extinction, skimming over a lot of the less relevant details. So if you feel like you already understand Extinction's story and how it ties into ARAT Prime, feel free to skip ahead to the time on screen. I won't hold it against you. And for the rest of you who are still here, let's get this party started. After activating the gateway, a portal whose construction was helmed by this guy named Santiago, some of you might know him, the survivors of Aberration made it planetside, where they were essentially stranded alone in the tidally locked, post-apocalyptic hellscape that had become of Earth. With nowhere else to go, they used the overly abundant element propagating the planet's surface to set up Camp Omega within the safe cradle that was the Great City, also known as Sanctuary. Safe in giant red quotes, because the camp quickly came to realize that they weren't alone at all. In fact, they were in grave danger on account of the colossal titans they had spotted on an excursion into the surrounding wasteland. Just as he had designed the gateway, Santiago began to design a weapon which could slay the titans and protect Camp Omega.
Giant bipedal battle mechs. Some people may call that fighting fire with fire, but I call it fighting a small gun with a much bigger gun.
Whereas Santiago was able to reference Aberration's obelisks in the construction of the gateway due to their pre-existing teleportation tech, the mechs were completely up to his own ingenuity, their shining feature being the ability to fuse 4 into 1, transforming it to something Santiago called a megamech. But before he could even hope to put something like that into action, he had to first decide on pilots. Mei-Yin, Helena, a survivor named Kazuma, and Santiago himself were eventually decided on as the final pilots, allowing work on the mechs to be continued. Progress, however, came to a crawl, as error upon error plagued Santiago the further he advanced. Until one day, the survivors pulled him aside for a birthday celebration. His birthday celebration. Though Santiago accepted his cake only begrudgingly, as it turned out the break allowed him to identify and resolve the mech's development issue.
It's too soon. They found us too soon. Those big monsters we saw, the ones that prompted this whole mech project in the first place, there's some of them headed towards Camp Omega, and they're bringing a legion of help. Mechanized drones, mutated animals, the works. Why did it have to be now? Another half a day and we'd be able to link up. We were that close.
Tragically, he would never get to see his final brainchild to completion. The Titans were approaching their exact location from the distant horizon, and with them, a legion of creatures twisted and corrupted from their time in the barren, element-afflicted wasteland. And so in a final act of desperation, Santiago climbed into the sole operational mech, and led the Titans on a march across Extinction, an attempt to give the survivors of Camp Omega a shot at surviving whatever came next.
Welcome back to Earth. If you're reading this, maybe I didn't make it. Whatever. As long as someone's there to read this note, that means there's still at least one survivor left. Your best bet right now is to find my friends at Camp Omega if you can. They're good people, and they'll need all the help they can get. Have them train you up on the mechs I built. Stop those titans, save the world. That's all that matters. Personal note. Fight fire with a bigger fire. Just hope that worked. That I managed to buy Camp Omega sometime. All I know is I'm not going to be around to see for myself. Personal note. See you in a bit, D.
By the time Mei-Yin and Helena were able to power on their own mechs, there was no sign of Santiago anywhere. Following his death, the survivors were left with only two options. Hide away in a cave and pray for nothing to find them, or Helena's insistence. Hone in on a mysterious signal further into the wastes that Santiago had shown her during mech training. Believe it or not, despite everything the survivors had experienced up to that point, everything they had survived, from Aberration to Rockwell to the Titans' assault on Camp Omega, a whopping half of them voted for the former, in favor of awaiting their own inevitable demise. including Mei Yin, who thankfully changed her mind and sided with Helena at the last second. Arriving at the location of the mysterious signal, what the survivors found inside was a sprawling server room containing data on the ARKs and their reseed protocol, how they were supposed to touch down across the surface of the planet and free it of the toxic element polluting it.
I've been deciphering the information we found for 2 days straight. The reseed protocol never initialized. I can't quite figure out why though. It just says the conditions have not been met. Damn it, that can't be it. Maybe that artifact Mei Yin mentioned. I'll ask her to show me where it is.
After 2 days of struggling to decipher any information she could get her hands on, Helena had Mei Yin show her to where she found a strange artifact, in hopes that it could be used to access the archive's data. But when Helena reached out to touch it, visions flooded her mind. A man made of light, monsters roaring, a sky on fire. When she regained her own sense of reality, what remained in the artifact's place was what she called a prism of raw cosmic energy. Having confiscated the prism for Helena's safety, Mei Yin allowed her to study it only from what she deemed a safe distance.
I even told her about the images I'm seeing. They're growing clearer with every day I spend studying the prism. And one in particular keeps coming up. In it I see a single room, in the depths of a cave. It is both a tomb and a throne, where a coffin-like structure sits on a raised platform, surrounded by silvery metal and glowing crystals. The walls glimmer, and a light shines down from above. Or is it rising up from below? I can't tell. Violet fingers clawing at bedrock, knuckle deep in soil. They reached further, stretching, splitting, and spreading like a web as stone crumbled beneath them. Until at last they found a molten heart, its cadence soft and steady. Without pity, they grasped it in their twisting tendrils and squeezed. The heart's rhythm slowed, then it stopped altogether, and at last it turned to cold, lifeless stone. As the heart died, strings of shadows shot from the violet fingers. I traced them across cracked and drying flesh, and when the strands ended, I saw it. An army of monstrous shadows hunting for even the smallest glimmer of light, and they were marching right towards me.
Without coincidence, the Lieutenant Titans and their corrupted legion, commanded by the King Titan himself, once again tracked down the survivors, or more specifically, the Prism. What ensued can only be described as a bloody massacre, as the army ruthlessly slaughtered every single survivor. Before the King Titan could destroy Mei Yin's mech, Helena opened her own and inserted the prism which she had stolen back from Mei directly into her specimen implant. A shrill noise rang across their surroundings as the Titans shrieked in agony, forcing even the King Titan to retreat. All that remained was Helena and Mei, but at what cost? As Helena slid in and out of a catatonic state inflicted upon her by the prism, veins of light spreading across her body, all she could do was lead Mei Yin to that tomb she had envisioned earlier, the Tomb of Ascension. Following crude maps provided to her by Helena, Mei ventured into the Arctic Proto-Ark, where she refueled her mech and began to amass an army of her own in order to fight the ever-persistent horde that had begun again to hunt them down. Truly, if I had the willpower and chutzpah of the Titans, maybe I'd be able to get these scripts done in some time under a month. Jesus Christ. Eventually, the two survivors outpaced the horde to the sunken forest, where Mei cleared out the forest cave and brought Helena to the aforementioned Tomb of Ascension. Just as Helena was placed into the tomb, the Titans had caught up with Mei Yin, forcing her and her army to fend them off again, leaving Helena in the chamber to stabilize. Upon returning to the tomb, where Helena once lay, was now a figure reminiscent of the same energy exuded by the artifact. A figure of pure cosmic energy. Helena had ascended into something greater than human, beyond Mei Yin's understanding. And as the room shone in a chorus of light, what little remained of Helena's physical form dissipated. Despite having fulfilled her mission, with no one left, Mei Yin was truly alone, left to wander the wastes until both herself and her mech finally gave way. That is, until she was suddenly awoken by the earth-shaking approach of the Forest Titan looming over her. Despite knowing that she wouldn't last long, Mei-Yin engaged what she thought was to be her final battle on foot, before another mech crashed into the ground, obliterating absolutely everything in its wake. And who else could the pilot be than Diana goddamn Alvarez? That's right, Diana. The same Diana that was killed all the way back on Aberration after her fellow survivor Rockwell hulked out and attacked the tech village in an element-induced roid rage. Trust me, he'll be important later, but with that said, how the hell is she here on Earth fighting the Forest Titan in a mech suit? Well, we can look to Helena to explain that little maneuver. Or more precisely, Helena Deus. You see, when Helena had slipped that artifact into her wrist, she unknowingly started the process of becoming what's called a Homo Deus. Now, explaining what exactly a Homo Deus is actually a bit more complex than what I had intended for this video, because we'd have to delve into the themes of transhumanism, separating the works of Yuval Harari from original ARK writer Mark Soskin, and a whole lot of speculative shit I don't have the time nor energy to talk about. So to condense it into terms a rock could understand, Homo Deus is essentially the next hypothetical step in human evolution, a sort of godlike post-humanism. After Helena vanished into sweet nothings back at the Tomb of Ascension, that wasn't her just fading away into non-existence. No, that was her completing her ascension into a Homo Deus, what is, under the context of ARK, a being of pure energy which lives on in a plane past our existence. It was in this unfamiliar plane that Helena Deus saw Mei-Yin, alone and facing death in the wastes. So she struggled, she kicked and thrashed, and through sheer will and coincidence alone, Helena clung on to the remnants of Diana's very consciousness within the ARK system, and with it, brought her back from the dead and into Sanctuary, where she built herself back up from square one under the guidance of Helena Deus in the back of her head, instructing her what to do and where to go.
It was a happy accident, born of desperation. Death, that inescapable hunter, closed in on its lonely prey, and I couldn't bear the sight. I tried to pry its jaws open, but I had no hands. So blindly, I thrashed and cried for help until I stumbled upon her. One who could be those hands. One who could give that person more than I ever could. My thoughts grasped her thread and tugged. Without knowing how, I pulled her back into the world for a second chance. And death lost its first tooth.
Now, Diana didn't know that the guide in the back of her head was Helena, so she was really just following some creepy-ass ethereal something deeper and deeper into the city, until at last it led her to Santiago, and his damaged mech splayed lifeless across the foot of a building.
Wow, you really outdid yourself with this mech, Santiago. Even busted up and slumped against a building. It's one impressive machine, and it looks like you made sure it went down swinging. Would have been a blast to put it through its paces together, like we did with that tech armor when we first met. It's not right that you died here all alone after everything you did. The Gateway Project gave us hope for the future, and you made it possible. Honestly, I'm not sure why the voice would bring me back and not you too. It doesn't seem fair.
After burying Santiago's remains, Diana turned her attention to his mech, repairing it the best she could before taking it onwards and into the wastes, where Helena Deus guided her to Mei-Yin in the midst of battle with the Forest Titan. One extra large Subway salad later, and the two survivors were finally reunited again. It's so beautiful, god damn it! After cannibalizing part of her own mech, Diana got Mei's mech in working order as well. They were gonna need as much firepower as they could get their hands on, for whatever Helena Deus had in store for them next. A several-day journey to the control center of the ARKs. There, with the help of Mei-Yin, Diana learned all she could about the ARKs and the element corruption preventing their reseeding of Earth. Within the control center is also where they first found references to a mysterious place called ARAT Prime on the other frozen side of the tidally locked planet. I bet you forgot this video was about ARAT Prime in the first place, didn't you? Well, fuckle your shit belts, survivors, and those who skipped ahead, because things are about to get juicy.
These Titans remind me of combat drones. This control center has tracked their general migration patterns, and to my eye, they're almost like troop movements. When they decide to swarm something, they come from all over, like something's commanding them. Not to mention they spread element everywhere they go. So basically, before the reseed protocol can be triggered, the Titans need to be eliminated. There must be something we can do, though. I did find lots of references to a place called ARAT Prime, off on the other side of the planet. Looks promising, but... Well, now isn't that interesting? Our favorite mystery being seems to think so too. Is that where it's leading us?
Before Diana and May could make their first moves towards ARAT Prime, they had one teeny tiny issue to contend with. The King Titan had recovered with a vengeance, and intent to finish what he had started. And so returning to the site of the King Titan's massacre, Diana and May repaired the other two abandoned mechs. Despite only having 2 pilots, they were going to attempt a successful Mega Mech transformation in order to fend off the King Titan once and for all. And it worked. The Mega Mech fused at 70% capacity, Diana controlling 75% of its overall systems, May taking 25% wielding the sword. Countering the King Titan's initial onslaught, adrenaline pumping through their veins, the 2 survivors carved a huge X-shaped wound into its chest, inflicting it with a pain it had never experienced before, sending it packing like a big purple lizard baby back to the wastes. With the King Titan vanquished for good, the 2 survivors returned to their old tribe mates and buried them all in a final act of closure before setting their sights on ARAT Prime, ready to brave the treacherous, frozen wasteland that awaited them on the other side of the planet, under the guidance of Helena Deus.
Mission log, First Lieutenant Diana Alvarez, URE 82nd Fighter Squadron, and Li Mei-yin of Yi, Beast Queen of the Jungle, the Depths, and the Wastes. If you're reading this, then like us, then you managed to break free of the Arks. So welcome to Earth, kid. Hope you like ravaged hellscapes, because the bad news is you're late to the apocalypse. The good news is you can do something about it. The 2 of us are gonna do what we can to help, but it won't be enough. You see those huge, ugly monsters out there? They need to be cleared out, or Earth can't recover. Also, if you see one with an X-shaped scar on its chest, do me a favor and flip it off before you finish it. We'll do our part, the rest is up to you. Good luck.
Fast forward years, centuries, all the way to the survivors' arrival to Extinction, as the one who tries again, also under the guidance of Helena Deus, now known as She Who Waits. Determined to save the world, we build ourselves up all the way from the Stone Age to metallurgy, and all the way to the Tech Era. We tame dinosaurs, if you can even call that thing a dinosaur, defend orbital supply drops, and bend the Lieutenant Titans to our own will, all in order to complete our ultimate mission: slay the king, activate the reseed protocol, save Earth. While the Explorer notes offer a small glimpse into ARAT Prime as a concept, veteran Extinction survivors, those with more than 5 minutes of gameplay, have undoubtedly come across these centuries-old tech glyphs, or TEKXT, text as I like to call it. Get it? Because it's text, it's like text, it's easier to say than text. Okay, anyways, these strings of text pop up in a lot of places in ARK. The She Who Waits notes, HLNA's notes, the Extinction Ascension, this, that, the other thing. It also used to be present on Extinction Evolved, before what, if I remember correctly, to be some kind of shader or optimization error caused it to disappear from most areas of the game, including the Hall of History. I guess you could say that Wildcard has a hell of a history breaking this shit, because the text also appears to be broken in ASA, as anytime I try to get these things to work outside of single player, I can't get them to, annoying as that is. Damn it, Wildcard, I love you and I hate you at the same time, my sweet summer game studio. With that said, a portion of you guys probably already know what I'm leading up to, but for those of you in the back, these glyphs can actually be translated relatively easily in one of two ways. Either you can go to the Ascension page of the ARK wiki and painstakingly cross-reference each and every symbol, entering all of them until you get a message which, 9 times out of 10, is wrong for whatever reason, or, in the case of the Sanctuary text, you can just slap on a tech helmet and have it all translated before your very eyes. Really, it's that simple. Now, instead of doing that, I'm gonna spend an hour opening the, no joke, 830 gigabyte ARK Ascended dev kit, just so I can see all of the glyphs in order, starting with the group titled TXT. TXT 1 through 5.
Cabot Express Z127-81. Vasco Residence Z126-88. Shanzong Residence Y114-44. Barrett Residence Y115-45. Livingstone Plaza closed Y124-16. Overseer Protocol in progress, switching to automated.
Skip 6 through 8, TXT 9 and 10.
All Gamma level personnel, proceed to your nearest shelter. Warning, hostile contact. Defensive barrier active.
Skip 11 through 16, TXT 17.
Emergency rationing is in effect. Violations will result in immediate punishment.
Skip 18 through 20, TXT 21 and 22. They share the same message.
Overseer Protocol in progress. Lock down your stations.
TXT 23 and 24. They also share the same message.
Please do not touch the plants.
TXT 25 and 26.
ARAT Prime is locked down. Emergency launch sequence initiated. Warning, this is a level 4 alert. Hostile forces are inbound.
Skip TXT 27 through TXT 143. TXT 144. Why did you name them like this, wildcard?
ARAT Prime have gone silent. Launch was not confirmed.
And then, onto the second set of glyphs, which look identical to the other set, but are listed as TXT Overseer 1 through 7. For whatever reason, there are 2 TXT Overseer 1s, the first of which is lumped into the normal TXTs. They are as follows.
Hostile forces are inbound. Proceed to your nearest shelter. ARAT Prime have gone silent. Launch was not confirmed.
And then TXT Overseer 2 through 7.
Emergency rationing is in effect. Violations will result in immediate punishment. Warning, this is a level 5 alert. ARAT Prime have gone silent. Hostile forces are inbound. A7 priority communication received. ARAT Prime is locked down. Manual override initiated. Hostile forces are inbound. Warning. Hostile contact.
Defensive barrier active.
Did I say these were in order? Well, I lied, because for reasons only God knows, the Sanctuary glyphs are still jumbled up into an incomprehensible mess with seemingly no proper timeline. So rather than reading them to you that way, I spent a grueling 9 minutes reorganizing them into a more comprehensible mess.
Warning, this is a level 4 alert. Hostile forces are inbound. Hostile forces are inbound. Hostile forces are inbound. Proceed to your nearest shelter. All Gamma level personnel, proceed to your nearest shelter. Manual override initiated. Hostile forces are inbound. Overseer Protocol in progress. Lock down your stations. Overseer Protocol in progress. Switching to automated. Emergency rationing is in effect. Violations will result in immediate punishment. A7 priority communication received. ARAT Prime is locked down. ARAT Prime is locked down. Emergency launch sequence initiated. ARAT Prime have gone silent. Launch was not confirmed. Warning. This is a level 5 alert. ARAT Prime have gone silent. Warning. Hostile contact.
Defensive barrier active.
Sanctuary is important for a lot of reasons, from being the origin point of the ARKs, where the system was created, etc. Not only that, but according to Mark Soskin, it was also intended to act as the final bastion of humanity itself. Think Tokyo 3 from Evangelion. The most popular interpretation of these glyphs is as the final moments of Sanctuary, before being ravaged by an army of titans and the corrupted. Think Tokyo 3 from Evangelion. The initial level 4 alert likely refers to the horde encroaching from the distant wastes, similar to how Camp Omega first spotted them heading their way, after which they took a short period to arrive. From there, all Gamma level personnel are instructed to proceed to their shelters and hunker down there in supposed safety. Supposed safety. I assume the term Gamma level personnel is made in reference to the citizens of Sanctuary, as Gamma is consistently at the bottom of the Gamma Beta Alpha power scaling in ARK. Alpha being the strongest, Beta being a sort of middle ground, and Gamma being the weakest. Then the Overseer Protocol is initiated. What is the Overseer Protocol? No clue, other than the fact that whatever it is, it's set to some kind of automated process. Though there are clearly no actual Overseers present in Sanctuary, if the role of the Overseers on the ARKs is anything to go by, this may be referring to some form of strict law or dictation, such as the aforementioned emergency rationing and punishment for those who disobey. It's clear that times are bad, with the survival of Sanctuary's inhabitants hinging on obedience, the very structure of society becoming warped by the impending titans and the apocalypse they harbor. Amidst the chaos, Sanctuary receives an A7 priority communication from its sister location on the other side of the planet, that for one reason or another, ARAT Prime has been locked down. An emergency launch sequence then begins, but for what exactly, we'll get to in a moment. And after that, radio silence. ARAT Prime has gone silent. Launch unconfirmed. This is a level 5 alert. ARAT Prime has gone silent. We're left with a final warning that the hostiles have made contact with Sanctuary and that its defensive barrier has been activated in response, before they too fall silent. Wow, okay, damn, that is bleak. But what does this all mean for ARAT Prime? Why did it go silent amidst all this chaos between Sanctuary, the world, and itself? What was that launch referring to? Though ARAT Prime was originally interpreted by many as the launch site of the ARKs, new context from Genesis has since shifted that perspective. In more recent times, it's been speculated that ARAT Prime was the launch site of the Genesis colony ship.
Good news. Your armor kept you mostly in one piece. So, quick update. This isn't a simulation. We're really on a ginormous spaceship.
The initial belief that ARAT Prime was the launch site of the ARKs stemmed from what we now know to be a red herring with the name Arat, which provided a plausible enough connection to the real-world location of Mount Ararat. Ararat? But it sounds like a fucking DJ, man. Mount Ararat. There we go, that's how you pronounce that. Which is the supposed resting place of Noah's Ark from the biblical passage Genesis 8:4. However, translating ARAT Prime's Latin name to English, you'll come to realize differently. ARAT Prime essentially translates to the first plow, which makes sense in the context of the Genesis ship, seeing as not only does the development of Genesis predate that of the ARKs, but the ship itself acts as a plow in a sense, except rather than cutting through the dirt to make way for plant seeds, the ship cuts through the cosmos in order to make way for the ship's ring seeds and the earth life they harbor. That said, it's equally speculated that the A7 priority communication was a result of the Genesis ship's successful launch, something Sanctuary had no way to verify, as they sat on the complete opposite end of the planet to ARAT Prime as it went radio silent. hence the launch remaining unconfirmed.
Hey, Still, I want you to take a look at this.
Oh, hey Red, what do you got?
What I've got in my pocket's gonna make you wish you'd never been born.
Confront the demons of ARAT Prime, birthplace of the ARKs? Fuck! Okay, I think now is a good time to inform you all that when I had initially begun writing this script, the Lost Colony teaser trailer had not come out yet. Though this timing was, for lack of a better word, inconvenient for yours truly, I can understand why Wildcard released it when they did. Probably to deflect the community-wide shitstorm that came with Snail Games' reveal of their 10-year anniversary AI cash grab, passion project DLC, Aquatica for Survival Evolved, which I refuse to discuss here because I'd rather not talk about how one of the most corrupt publishers in gaming is sodomizing the corpse of my favorite franchise. Thank you! Tangent aside, one teeny tiny issue with ARAT Prime being the concrete origin of the Genesis ship can be found within the description of the Lost Colony teaser trailer, where in the very first line it claims that ARAT Prime is the birthplace of the ARKs, which is so wrong on so many levels. Because, as stated by Helena Deus in her second note on Extinction, the ARK system, and by extension the ARKs themselves, were first conceptualized by the transhumanists and Homo Deus of Sanctuary. What is all but outright confirmed to have been a United Republics of Earth-occupied city. And if you don't know who those are, the URE was the very nation that built the goddamn ARKs.
This city has been empty for so long. Far longer than it was full. Yet its prime was truly wondrous. Short-lived though it was. A city built by the hands of man. Under the guidance of something higher. It is here where the system was born. And the prototype was forged around it.
Hell, we see this in Extinction's map design itself, in the Proto-Arcs, which predate the Orbital Arcs and their second predecessor, an Orbital Proto-Arc from the Gen 2 notes called the Farm. For future reference, due to conflicting information, I'm just going to treat this inconsistency as if it were a silly little typo and think nothing of it for the rest of the video, lest I be forced to spend its entire duration cutting around this issue. Got it? Kosher? Good. Speaking of the ARKs, let's check back up on the Survivor and make sure they're comprehending all of this as well. Oh goody, they just killed the King Titan, meaning that the reseed protocol can finally be activated. Now the ARKs can touch down and get rid of all this element What the hell? You! For a second there, I almost forgot about you and your tentacle hentai weirdness. So, good news, bad news. The good news is that the reseed protocol was successful, and all the little ARKs spread their flora and fauna across the surface of the globe, bringing Earth back to her former glory. And you've made the cosmic horror beyond human comprehension that is Helena Deus very proud indeed. The bad news is that everyone seems to have forgotten that the Aberrant ARK was a part of that reseed equation as well, which is bad considering the fact that it too was housing its own horror beyond human comprehension in Rockwell. That's right, despite everyone thinking that he was dead for good after the events of Aberration, where we essentially obliterate him and escape to Earth, somehow, some way, he managed to survive Aberration crash landing near ARAT Prime, barely clinging to life and with a taste for cosmic domination on whatever remains of his tongue. Which is really, really bad for a multitude of reasons, none more so than the little plot point known as the Superluminal Link. Okay, so this next section is going to get really down there in terms of deep dives because most of this information I'm going to be citing from this point onwards comes not from the game itself but from Twitter, back when it was still called that, I guess. During a real-world event called PAX West back in 2022, the newly debuting lead writer Peter Fries came online to show off the life-sized HLNA he was controlling at Wildcard's ARK booth. This quickly devolved into a spur-of-the-moment AMA where he, for whatever reason, actually told us a lot of yet-to-be-revealed lore, which is how I even know that Aberration crash landed near ARAT Prime, because he outright told us. This is also how I know about the Superluminal Link. For the 90% of you who don't know what the hell that is, it's basically a faster-than-light connection. Kind of like teleportation, but not really, but also pretty much just teleportation, but also kind of like, not really. Whatever, the science is irrelevant here. It's just a link from point A to point B that's faster than the speed of light. Got it? Point A being located somewhere within ARAT Prime, and point B being aboard the Genesis ship. This connection is actually doubled down on in Gen 2 by Genesis crewmate Nida.
If I hadn't been reverse engineering Genesis simulation code, I never would have noticed these anomalies in the system. We've been visited by something transhuman. I saw the evidence inside Genesis. Maybe I shouldn't leave a record of this, but I think someone left a superluminal link back to ARAT Prime that one of them used to find us out here, one of the Homo Deus.
It just so happens that someone, or more accurately someones, left the supercalifragilisticexpialidocious link open by mistake, hundreds of years before Rockwell's descent to Earth. Whoops.
We're pioneers, but we aren't the first survivors to get back to Earth. Years ago, a few survivors got back, one of whom was Helena, the survivor who made me. They saw the same devastation you're seeing right now, and they sought their own way to escape. For Helena, that meant ascending and becoming Homo Deus, an energy being beyond our reality. For her friends, it meant a long journey to a place called ARAT Prime, where they figured out a way to beam Helena into the Genesis simulation. And then she made me. But then she left. I guess Homo Deus beings can't stay in our reality, or the simulation, for very long. She gave me basic access to the simulation, but not a lot of guidance beyond that.
What you just listened to was HLNA Discoveries number 14 and number 15 on Extinction, which were part of the Genesis Chronicles leading up to the initial release of Gen 1 to ARK Survival Evolved. This is huge because it not only confirms that Mei Yin and Diana both made it to ARAT Prime, but it also means that they were the ones who opened the superluminal link for Helena Deus to pass through, which she would eventually use to create HLNA. After which Mei and Diana... After which they... wait, what the hell do they do after that? We don't really know anything about what happens to the duo after they open the superluminal link. We don't know if they were eventually killed, if they themselves used the link to get onto Genesis, or what. All we know is that they succeeded in opening it, and according to Peter Fries, hundreds of years pass before Helena actually uses it to make HLNA. Directly after watching her final sunrise with the one who tries again after the events of Extinction, before passing out of our plane of reality for good. Aberration then makes its impact near ARAT Prime, allowing Rockwell to escape and send his consciousness through the still active superluminal link across the galaxy and into the Genesis ship, where he lies in wait for an opportunity to take over the onboard Genesis simulation. Didn't understand even a modicum of that abysmal info dump? No worries, because I'm about to hit you with another one, in the form of a recap. Let's recap everything up to this point, just to be safe. And for those of you who skipped the Extinction part of the video, I want those asses planted firmly in those gamer thrones, because before moving on to the brand new trailer, where the Survivor comes into all of this and what Lost Colony might actually look like, we're about to get real timeliney. From the top, people. By the end of the world, there were two prevalent bastion cities on the opposite side of the Earth to one another. Lost Colony's ARAT Prime and Extinction's Sanctuary. Just as Sanctuary was the birthplace of the Arks, ARAT Prime is theorized to be the birthplace of the Genesis colony ship, which houses the Genesis simulation. We know that, shortly before Sanctuary fell to the Titans, ARAT Prime sent out a distress signal, alerting Sanctuary that they too were going on lockdown for unknown reasons, while setting the Genesis ship for an emergency launch, after which they went completely silent. The ship's launch remaining unconfirmed for those who remained in Sanctuary. We, however, know that its launch was successful due to the existence of the Genesis DLCs, as was the launching of the Arks. Hundreds, if not thousands of years into the future, the sole survivors of Camp Omega, led by Helena Walker in intangible Homo Deus form, Diana Alperez, and Mei Yin Lee, find themselves inside the Ark Control Center, where Diana analyzes its data concerning the Arks, including vague mentions of ARAT Prime. After leaving and subduing the King Titan, the two of them travel to the frozen side of the Earth, where they eventually discover the lost colony of ARAT Prime and open a superluminal link from the city to the Genesis colony ship. Jump ahead another several centuries to the conclusion of Extinction after we the survivors slay the King Titan, enabling the Arks to return and reseed the Earth. Subsequently, Helena Deus uses the superluminal link at ARAT Prime to create HLNA as an aid to the Genesis ship, before returning to her own plane of existence. Coincidentally, as an unforeseen result of the reseed protocol, Aberration crashes in the vicinity of ARAT Prime, allowing Rockwell to free himself from the broken arc and make his way to the superluminal link as well, where he uses it to send his consciousness to the gen ship. Now, is everyone caught up with the absolute brain fuck that is the story so far? Is that a wave of no's I hear? Well, too bad, because going forward, I'm gonna assume all of you gave me resounding yes, as we're gonna add on to this with new information and a little theory crafting from the Lost Colony teaser trailer. Here's an abridged version for those who haven't seen it or need a refresher.
Do you know what it's like to want someone back with you more than anything?
I do. I loved someone once. Very much.
What happened to her?
I had to leave her behind. Mayin's story continued to the far side of the earth, into frozen wastes shrouded in endless night, where a small pocket of humanity managed to survive the long cataclysm, in a place called ARAT Prime. But what she found instead...
What? What was it?
There she found the stuff of nightmares.
It's in this trailer that we get some dialogue from Mika for the first time since Bob's Tall Tales, and she's talking to Helena. Human Helena? As in, not a projection of a Homo Deus Helena? That Helena? How? Why? When? God, where were you when I was making my video on the story of ARK 2? Shameless plug, by the way. Helena's appearance here in what would appear to be ARK 2, judging by the background foliage, is fucking huge! And I guess implies through some level of Homo Deus Ex Machina that, like Santiago, Helena was also respawned as a part of the arrival with her memories of the Arks onto Arat, the planet of ARK 2. As to who they're referencing when discussing people they miss, if you've seen the ending of Bob's Tall Tales on Extinction, you'd know that Mika is referring to Diana, while Helena is referring to Mei-Yin, who she had to, in a way, abandon after she ascended into a Homo Deus. Still no clue how she left that ascended state though. No way in hell is this the original Helena. This one has to be a clone. Has to be. We then see Mei fighting off this freaky, suspiciously humanoid vampire thing, which manages to sink its teeth into her shoulder. After watching the vampire eat Mei-Yin's tech bow staff, we pan out to the city of ARAT Prime in the distance, featuring the voices of Michelle Yeoh as Mei-Yin, Madeline Madden as Helena Walker, Auli'i Cravalho as Mika, along with these three icons: the element and glasses symbolizing Rockwell, voiced by David Tennant, the United Republics of Earth logo symbolizing Diana, voiced by an unknown actor, and this, symbolizing something important, which I'll get to in a little while. But wait, there's more! Scrolling down into the description, we get, just ignore that part, in the description we get the following information. Confront the demons of ARAT Prime in ASA's first massive canonical expansion pack, ARK Lost Colony, starring Michelle Yeoh as Mei-Yin in cinematic anime sequences by legendary Japanese studio MAPPA, The new epic story of ARK Lost Colony bridges the gap from ARK Extinction to ARK Genesis and into the world of ARK 2. As you follow Mayin's footsteps through an intense journey into the heart of darkness, you'll unlock powerful lost character ability trees, befriend exotic tames, craft cursed tiers of gear, and master advanced new building systems. First canonical expansion pack, animated cutscenes, lost character trees, cursed gear, advanced buildings. Wait, first canonical expansion pack? You mean there's going to be multiple? You know what? Fuck it. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, because right now, what's more important is the next line from the trailer's description, reading, "But beware, the frozen wastes of ARAT Prime are not devoid of intelligent life. On the contrary, the city has become a war-torn battleground between twisted, element-powered factions, seeking to undo what was accomplished at the end of ARK Extinction. Together with generations of heroes, you'll unite the past and the future of ARK." Now this intrigues me. According to this, there are forces, multiple forces, fighting in order to undo what the one who tries again had done at the end of Extinction, which was to initiate the reseed protocol, putting into motion an eventual return to form for the planet Earth. But who exactly are these factions, and why exactly would they want to undo the reseed protocol? I believe that these three icons from the very end of the teaser trailer represent not only additional voice actors for Lost Colony, but three factions waging war on each other at ARAT Prime. In the center lies the logo of the United Republics of Earth, and by implication, Diana Altares, confirming we'll finally get to see her both animated and voiced by a yet-to-be-revealed mystery actor. Come to think of it, this is probably why we don't get to see her in the teaser trailer. Wildcard wants to keep us in the dark as to the identity of Diana's voice actor to keep it a surprise over anything else, considering her sudden importance in the ARK story. Thanks to HLNA, we've already established that both Diana and May were present at ARAT Prime to activate the superluminal link for Helena Deus, though unfortunately this means that by the time of the survivors' arrival, the two of them would likely be dead and gone, as the gap between their time and ours is centuries at least. And if this is the case, then how are the United Republics of Earth supposed to have an influence on ARAT Prime, with Diana the sole known remnant of the URE nation long since passed? I believe the presence of the URE logo portrays not just Diana herself, but the post-reseeded survivors as well, similarly to how the Terran Federation's influence is used in Genesis Part 2. In Gen 2, survivors aboard the Genesis colony ship have access to a lot of Federation tech in the war against Rockwell, which makes sense when you take into consideration that the ship itself is classified as Federation in origin.
This is a Terran Federation starship, and it's been searching for a habitable world for generations. Just imagine how much effort it must have taken to gather all of this up and shoot it off into space.
Tech phase pistol? Federation issue. Tech bow? Federation issue. Exomech, see that little symbol there? Federation issue. The keys in the mission Choose Your Own Adventure, same symbol, Federation. I mean, hell, you spawn in donning a freaking Federation exosuit. Come on, Wildcard, can you make it any more obvious? Therefore, I speculate that within Lost Colony, in order to fight against what I believe to be the two other element-powered factions, survivors will be making use of tech that is primarily United Republics of Earth in origin, and by extension representing the URE in a bid to ensure the reseed protocol's full completion and/or success. Speaking of those other factions, let's talk about what this is supposed to represent to the right. Some kind of specimen implant sprouting large bat-like wings identical to those of the vampire which attacked May in the Lost Colony teaser trailer. That's right, I've been calling them vampires this entire time and I haven't even explained why. There is so much symbolism in this trailer that it's almost embarrassing to me how much of it I actually missed on my first couple of watches. From the way this thing tries repeatedly to bite May in, successfully sinking its teeth into her shoulder, to the Lost Colony logo bearing fangs and dripping blood of its own, to these cursed Victorian Goth tech structures which make up the city of ARAT Prime, everything is pointing towards these things being vampires. Look, there's a castle off in the distance, a bona fide castle. How much more can this scream vampire to you? But why, you might ask, are vampires occupying the Lost Colony of ARAT Prime? Well, that's easy. These vampires are the lost colonists in question. After centuries and centuries of being exposed to the toxic element which had destroyed the world, they began to change, to evolve at a rapid rate, until they became what Helena described as the stuff of nightmares. Their design is of no coincidence to me. Their anatomical proportions, their bat-like ears, which they could use to echolocate in the long darkness, and the fur they grew across their necks and legs to survive the ice-cold climate, all of it screams human that mutated to survive their harsh environment. In fact, the vampires of Lost Colony remind me a lot of another entity we see in ARK, the Nameless. These chupacabras are as mysterious as they are shrouded in misinformation, on account of some really unfortunate linguistics in the description of Aberration. Waking up on Aberration, a derelict malfunctioning ARK with an elaborate underground biome system, survivors face new challenges unlike anything before. But beware the Nameless, unrelenting, element-infused humanoids which have evolved into vicious, light-hating monstrosities. For a time, people interpreted that second sentence to mean that the Nameless were other survivors who had succumbed to the molten element lakes flowing within the depths of Aberration. But that's not true. The line element-infused humanoids literally means that they have a humanish appearance. Nothing more, nothing less. So why then did I interrupt talking about vampires to debunk year-old misinformation about these hairless rat bastards? That would be because the vampires are the true Nameless of ARK. Really, take every incorrect thing you thought you knew about the Nameless and slap it onto these guys. Whereas Nameless aren't really humans mutated through element into what they are now, the vampires surely are. In fact, the two even share an ability very similar in appearance to one another. Just as the Nameless convulse and radiate light through their veins when assuming the role of their pack's alpha, we see the vampire Mei Yin fought back against do something visually similar, spreading its wings and shooting purple lightning from its body as the veins in its arms and legs glow red for a short time. Therefore, for lack of a better name, going forward, I will be referring to the vampires of Lost Colony as the Named, to keep me from having to say vampire 800 more times throughout this video. You're welcome. As for the Named's influence on ARAT Prime, I think it's most evident in the colony's infrastructure. I skimmed past it earlier without much elaboration, but the tech structures we see ARAT Prime to consist of are very 19th century in nature. High Victorian Gothic to be exact, which is weird, right? It seems so far removed from all the other tech we see in ARK. Like, imagine if Sanctuary was suddenly surrounded by towering Gothic castles and cathedrals. It'd be like stepping back in time, a regression from the more modern futuristic tech designs we've come to expect. That is until I made a very simple connection. If you look back to when the concept of vampires really took off and started to become popular, most sources will lead you to the 19th century, with literature such as Polidori's The Vampire, Sheridan Le Fanu's Carmilla, and the most iconic of all, Bram Stoker's Dracula, novels which cemented vampires' place in Gothic fiction to this very day. Given the circumstances, ARAT Prime's appearance likely underwent incremental modification. Giant red spotlights and towers that make the entire place seem as if it's looked down upon by some higher entity? No way did it look this mean to begin with. As its inhabitants adapted to their centuries-long confinement on the frozen side of the earth, so too did the city's buildings, resulting in what's likely to make up the cursed tier of gear alluded to in the description of the teaser trailer. Now, talking about the colony and the Named who still call it home, though life might not be perfect on the dark side of a tidally locked planet, given the darkness and the frigidity of it all, it's clear that they were doing just fine enough on their own regardless. I mean, look at the sheer size of ARAT Prime. The fact that after all this time it's still occupied is a testament to the resilience of its citizens. While they might not have asked to be mutated into monstrous man-bat hybrids beyond what you could feasibly call a human being, over time it was just accepted and integrated as their way of life. Which is why the one who tries again had to screw it all up by slaying the King Titan, thus activating the reseed protocol and breathing life back into the dead Earth. Why exactly is this a bad thing for the Named of ARAT Prime? Well, if you by any chance know anything about some of the more modern depictions of vampires, you know that they aren't too huge on sunlight. That is to say, they're gonna need a whole lot more than just some lotion to keep the sun from burning them alive during the day. And it just so happens that as a result of the reseed protocol, the day-night cycle is once again back in full swing.
Oh
sun's rising.
This explains the name's motivation for reversing the aforementioned effects of the RSP, as without their permanent night, ironically, they're beholden to the very thing that breathes life into Earth, the sun. Circling all the way back around to the sigil representing the named, I have yet to explain who exactly the figurehead of this faction actually is. And that's because I don't have a clue. None. Not one theory in my head that could explain who is possibly the leader of ARAT Prime, other than the fact that it could be some powerful, high-ranking vampire with the intent of stopping the reseed protocol so that the city of ARAT Prime and its people can once again live free of sunlight. Don't even get me started on the voice actor, because it's just as much of an enigma as to who the hell they're acting in the first place. But if there's something you feel I missed, please tell me in the comments, because I am genuinely at a loss here. There is such little information out there right now that I don't think I could even cobble together a half-decent theory if I tried. So instead, we now turn our attention to the icon on the left, the most divisive faction of all. That of Sir Edmund Rockwell. He's an interesting case, as his original goal as the Overseer of Aberration was to find a way to Earth, slay the King Titan himself, and re-flourish the planet in his image, foregoing the Reseed Protocol entirely.
Only through my divinity can mankind hope to take back its home. I will assume the mantle of Recreator and return life to the world. The world has fallen to titanic monstrosities that will snuff you out like a candle flame. It takes a god to kill titans, you fool.
Considering the fact that we kinda stole that opportunity from him by activating the RSP ourselves, he obviously has reason to want to stop it, and set his own designs into motion, after fighting himself in ARAT Prime. As for how exactly he plans to go about this, I'm not entirely sure. Initially, I toyed around with the idea of Rockwell forming a sort of pact with the Named, as he himself hails from the 19th century and may find some form of familiarity or fondness in the colony's Victorian architecture. This concept quickly left my mind though, as Rockwell's intent to claim Earth as his own is in direct conflict with the goals of the other hypothetical factions. The Survivors, obviously, as it's their intent to see the Reseed Protocol through to completion so that the Earth may become fully inhabitable again. And the Named, who really only want a tidally locked Earth so they don't have to spend their lives in recluse from the day. Neither side is even remotely interested in living under Rockwell's beck and call. If not the Named, then what would Rockwell's faction consist of? It's likely that, given the assumed diurnal restrictions the Named would have, that being the deadly laser that is our sun, Rockwell would automatically be a way bigger danger than they are by sheer presence alone. But presence isn't enough to fight a war. Usually, a war is fought by armies headed by someone of a higher rank, typically politicians or military leaders. In the case of the Survivors, if I'm correct, it would be the URE, or at least the concept of the URE. For the Named, it'd be whoever that mysterious winged implant is signifying. Rockwell, however, doesn't actually have any discernible army that I could point out. For those of you typing, but wait, didn't he make his own people in Genesis 2? Yes, he did, but not only are the mutated survivors from later in the timeline, it's directly implied by Rockwell Prime that he had only begun to create them by the time they're brought up to the Survivor.
I have to admit, I'm actually glad you've made it this far. Someone from the old world really should be here to witness the dawning of my new age. You see, I've been dabbling in a bit of anthropogenesis, molding some people of my own. You've arrived on the 6th day of my divine work, and I can't wait for you to meet my children.
The same issue applies with the concept of Rockwell forming an army of his own creatures, as it can be inferred from Gen 2 Chronicle number 12 that, like the mutated survivors, that level of genetic engineering wasn't something he had experimented with until his time aboard the Genesis colony ship, meaning creatures like the Noglin and Shadowmane were the very first of his kind.
I never understood Ms. Walker's affinity for the creatures on these arks. Now that I'm creating beasts of my own, I admit, I'm learning the appeal.
Sure, maybe Rockwell could hypothetically spread and grow across ARAT Prime like he goes on to do aboard the Genesis ship, but like I said before, presence isn't enough to fight, let alone win a war. Certainly not when you're up against two other factions. Whatever the case, I'm just gonna reluctantly cross it off as if he's just there by himself for now, since there's nothing really pointing towards him having any army of his own. And that's if, only if, Rockwell is still even present in ARAT Prime by the time the Survivor gets there, as it's entirely possible that he already sent his consciousness through the superluminal link by the time we arrive at the city. As for the Survivor, there's one big plot hole we have to turn our heads to get a real understanding of who the hell we even are in the first place. Confused? Well, so am I, and I have been for years, because from the very beginning on the island to the end of Extinction, we're told pretty clearly by Helena Deus that we are following in her footsteps as the same Survivor from start to finish, as the one who tries again, which by itself is a pretty simple concept. We the player just so happen to be the specific Survivor Helena Deus was holding out for to kill the King Titan and allow the Earth to be reseeded. Nice, compact, comprehensible. The problem lies beyond those events, originating in Genesis Part 1 and 2. One really strange detail across the Genesis DLCs is the fact that Rockwell not once acknowledges or addresses the Survivor as the one who defeated him on Aberration. This was technically passable in Genesis Part 1 because Rockwell's identity was supposed to be somewhat hidden behind the Master Controller, only to be revealed after you defeat him. Until they re-recorded his lines to be done by David Tennant, kind of going back on his whole Mystique thing, but that's besides the point I'm trying to make here. Where it got really strange was in Genesis Part 2, where even after coming face to faces, Rockwell still doesn't acknowledge us as the one who tries again. In fact, there's overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Interaction after interaction, he's completely oblivious to the Survivor's true identity.
Haven't I dealt with you already? Oh wait, no! No! I killed those other ones. The custodians.
This little glowing sprite seems to have taken quite a shine to you. Out of all the Survivor stock in the archive, well, you seem a capable enough specimen. Not sure I understand the fascination. What makes you so special,
This is the one you went with? After all those tests and games of pretend, you're Survivor? Well, I'm afraid neither of you is going to survive this.
And so, the only place I can turn to is good old Nettie. Where on Wednesday, September 20th, 2023, he emailed Peter Freeze asking for the solution to this very dilemma.
As far as I understand, the colonist Survivor, the one the player plays as in Genesis 1 and 2, is not the one who tries again, as in they are an entirely different Survivor. I understand Studio Wildcard may have wanted to leave this open-ended for the sake of allowing people to reuse the same Survivor, but is it safe to say that this is an entirely or partially new character we play as in the Genesis expansions, different from the Legacy one?
My attitude is that it's up to the player to decide if they might be the same Survivor in each iteration, though they are definitely incarnated in a new body aboard the Genesis ship. In the same way that Santiago, who was revived in the post-Genesis 2 Stinger, is not physically the same Survivor as any of his previous iterations. I'm sure you can come up with a personal headcanon to connect both iterations of your Survivor character if that's how you want to experience the game. No! What? Why would this be decided on? I don't get it. Who greenlit this baffling narrative decision? To have the identity of the Genesis Survivor be a complete and utter throwaway? God, I swear this is important to Lost Colony, but I have to point out how much I just absolutely hate this writing, especially with a concept as cool as the ones who try again, already in use, only to just say it doesn't matter? I mean, obviously it does for numerous reasons. Now, I should note that I'm not angry with Peter Freeze over this decision, because not only was he fresh at Wildcard at this point, but both Jesse and Jeremy, the co-founders of Studio Wildcard, have final say over narrative decisions such as these. So my beef is with the two of you. Let's say in Lost Colony and Genesis that we are the same survivor from the island through Extinction. Hypothetically, it would make sense as to why HLNA took a liking to us, but it would make no sense for Rockwell to not immediately recognize us. Not to mention the fact that if we encountered Rockwell at ARAT Prime right before the events of Genesis, why wouldn't we want to warn HLNA about the impending threat he poses? Unless for whatever reason we don't follow Rockwell through the superluminal link, which gives credence to the idea that he fled before we could make it to ARAT Prime. But if that's truly the case, then how could he be considered relevant enough to be teased in the Lost Colony teaser, if not for some form of presence in Lost Colony? Now, okay, suppose that in Lost Colony, we are just another survivor entirely. The Genesis survivor. Assuming that Rockwell is indeed present in physical form at ARAT Prime, this still leaves us without an explanation as to why we wouldn't warn HLNA about Rockwell once we enter Genesis for ourselves. Nor does it enlighten us as to why Rockwell doesn't recognize the survivor there. God, do you see the problem here? And this is all without mentioning the fact that by the time Rockwell goes on to hijack the Genesis ship and the Genesis simulation, HLNA had existed for approximately 8 years according to Nida note number 7. Oh my god, this causes so many problems. This could imply one of two things. If we're still choosing between the one who tries again and the Genesis survivor, not considering the possibility of a third, never-before-seen survivor, then they either took 7 to 8 years making it to ARAT Prime, where they then saved the world and used the superluminal link to enter Genesis, or they made their way to ARAT Prime shortly after the Reseed Protocol, saved the world, and sat in cryostasis for 8 years as Rockwell meandered in the background of the simulation until re-encountering us there. Another quote from the email exchange between Ned and Freeze:
HLNA was on the colony ship for roughly 8 years, or 3,000 cycles if I recall. Is there a reason why it took Rockwell 8 years to begin causing trouble on the ship? Had he been there about as long, or did he transfer 8 years after Helena had transferred and created HLNA?
I'm not sure offhand about the number of cycles in question, but my take on this is that Rockwell didn't begin truly taking over the ship systems until after his encounter with the player inside the simulation. I believe Helena Deus visited the Genesis ship and created HLNA at some point before the player arrived, and it's unclear whether she was aware that Rockwell's consciousness had invaded the simulation. You know what? Okay, you win. You get to play as whoever you want to play as. I don't care anymore. The events of Lost Colony and Genesis still happen, regardless as to the survivor's identity. It doesn't matter anymore. I've lost my will to care. Wait, this no. This is the same conclusion Freeze came to. And so, we the survivor, whoever the hell we are, follow in the footsteps of Mei Yin Lee and Diana Alvarez to ARAT Prime, where we find Rockwell and the Named in the midst of an intense power struggle. If this really is the new birthplace of the ARKs, which I hope it's not, as it means major retcons for both Extinction and the already messed up timeline as a whole, then the struggle in question could be a war over the new ARK Control Center, with both factions vying to get a hold of it in order to stop the ARKs from reseeding the planet, allowing Element to proliferate Earth as it did before. Rockwell's twisted vision sees him reshaping the world in his own grotesque image, just as we see him do aboard the Genesis colony ship with his commandeered garden ring. The Named, however, seek a different world, one where ARAT Prime, and by extension the side of Earth on which they reside, is yet again plunged into an eternal darkness, by reversing the planet's rotation and causing a second tidal lock. As for the survivors, it's their mission to kick tentacle, hentai, and vampire ass through the use of United Republics of Earth tech, ensuring the success of the Reseed Protocol, returning life as it was before its extinction to the Earth in its entirety. 3 factions, fueled by Element in a war for control over the planet's fate. But once all is said and done, a single loose end remains. Despite his inevitable defeat, Rockwell learns of the superluminal link during his time fighting over ARAT Prime. If he can't have Earth, then what's stopping him from annexing some other planet, far off into the distant cosmos? It's all the same to him, really. His goals remain the same. All he has to do is board that colony ship.
I have already set my designs in motion. Our future awaits, Survivor.
That's Lost Colony, bridging the gap between Extinction and Genesis through ARAT Prime and the war over Earth. Unfortunately, there were quite a few theories I wasn't able to touch on in this video due to time constraints. I mean, as of writing this, I'm sitting at a whopping 23 pages of ARK lore, so it's safe to say I'll be toning it down with future projects. I truly want to extend a heartfelt thank you to everyone who came from Netty the Noodle and his ARK content for trusting me to carry the torch that is explaining the story of ARK. Of course, I myself am not Ned, nor am I yet on the same scale or scope as he was when he left. Things like the survival stories are completely out of my reach, and I have no plans to remake them in any way, shape, or form. I know that's probably disappointing for a lot of you to hear, but I do have some surprises up my sleeve for those willing to stick around. I'm going pretty off the cuff with this, so I'm not exactly sure what I'm supposed to say really, but I want to thank you for your support and your willingness to stay around and, I guess, go from ground zero with a different creator. I'd also like to extend an additional thank you to my patrons over on Patreon, especially Hey NoQuest of Ascended Survivor status. Every little bit of support helps me get these videos out faster and with a higher quality production. That said, thank you for watching. My name's Nano, and I'll see you on the flip side, survivors.